welcome to this Kubestronaut check-in session. My name is Mumshad, and this is Michael Forrester, and we'll be your host for today. First of all, let us know in the chat where you're from. Let us know who you are and where you're from and what you do, and we'll kick things off in a second. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me once again. I appreciate it.
All right.
By the way, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, United States. Where are you at right now?
I'm in Singapore.
You're in
So
Singapore.
we are, what is that?
We're other side of the planet.
Yeah, opposite sides of the planet. So that's early morning for you, right?
Yeah, it's about 9 a.m. actually my time. So
okay.
Yeah.
9 to 10 p.m. my time.
Yeah.
Late in the day for me. Right, but we usually have most of the people. I think this is probably the time that works well for most people. So it's in the morning and in the US, and evening times in India around 7:30 in India. So it's a bit late here in kind of my part of the world and maybe Australia, but I think everywhere else it works well.
Yeah.
All right. We have someone from Abu Hani from Ireland. We have Mustafa Hadi from, didn't say where he's from. We have Mihir. We have Tom from Orlando, Florida, Unix Systems Administrator. 2 p.m. in Ireland. We have somebody in Ireland. Our Director of Curriculum is in Ireland, so kind of familiar with that. We have someone from Senegal.
And ageless Nigeria. That's interesting.
Ageless Nigeria, 3 p.m. So cool. So do let us know where you're from and what you do. And of course, over the course of the next hour, if you have any questions for us, please do share that in the chat. Okay, so let me just bring my deck here. And right, so what we're going to do today is, of course, we're just going to go through the cohort progress. We'll celebrate some of the recent certification achievers, Kubestronauts. We'll talk a little bit about the upcoming courses and launches, and we'll finally look at the Kubernetes 1.35 updates. So it's been a couple of months since it has come out. Our courses have been updated with this information. We recently released a video. Michael recorded a video recently about the updates, but we'll take probably a closer look at some of the updates in this session. So if you have any questions, please do share that in the chat. Okay, so the Kubernetes rockstars. So we have Yugender, who is a senior cloud and DevSecOps lead engineer, who's recently completed his CKA certification. We have Kaustuba, who's recently completed the CKS certification, so a tough one. Now we have Manik Dhawan, who's recently done the CKAD certification. Ahmed Tabit, who's completed the CKA. We have Ashen, who's an AWS certified cloud engineer, who's recently completed the CKAD certification. So completed with 91%. We have Preeti Jain, who is a software engineer at Cisco, who's recently completed the CKAD certification. Tarun Teja, who's recently completed the CKA. Vishnu Perumal, who's also recently completed his CKA. He's a senior DevOps and platform engineer. So congratulations to everyone. We have Numin, who is a DevOps engineer, who's also a Kubestronaut, who's recently completed her Kubestronaut journey. So congratulations to Numin. All right, and we also have Anas, who's a DevSecOps engineer, and he has also completed his Kubestronaut journey. So congratulations to Anas. Some of the others.
Just to say this, Mumshad, I also love how all those posts, they do all these creative things to kind of celebrate. Like Tharun had kubectl create like certificate
Yeah.
And it was like career milestone. He had all these interesting flags.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in there. You guys are very creative. So congratulations. Yeah.
Yep.
Please.
Yeah, there's a trend that I had recently seen. You have like a pod running. You have the CKAD
Right.
running there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Pretty creative. Yeah, and then you have the create certificate. I think that's probably the most relevant.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just moving on, we have Leslie Cordell, who's recently become a Kubestronaut, and but he's on the track to becoming a golden Kubestronaut. So he's done his Argo certification. So congratulations there. We have Alok Rahul, who is an infra dev specialist at Cognizant, and he's recently completed his Prometheus certified associate certification. We have Anna Pedra, who has recently completed her FinOps certified practitioner certification. We have Syed Imran, who has recently completed the LFCS certification, and is that on the way to Golden Kubestronaut? That officially, he says, that officially makes it 15 of 15 certification to become a Golden Kubestronaut. So yeah, congratulations there, Syed. And we have our own Marco Filipovic, who has recently completed his Cilium certified associate certification. So congratulations to Marco as well.
Yeah. Excellent.
Cool. Yeah, congratulations to all. And we just want to switch gears to the KubeCon. So we will, as we stated last time, in March end, we're going to be at Amsterdam. So KubeCon Europe is at Amsterdam this time, and we have 3 talks. So we have 3 sessions. So we have the backend first IDP a session and the solutions showcase by Abhinav Sharma. He's our DevOps engineer based in India. So he's going to be presenting a production roadmap with Argo CD, Crossplane, and OPA. So this one is at the Cloud Native Theater, March 23rd, 3:20 local time. We then have Michael and I'll be presenting on how Kubernetes actually ships. So it's basically an education's guide to SIGs and tags and all of that. And this is at the Cloud Native Theater, Hall 8. This is going to be on Tuesday, March 24th. And we finally have AI on Kubernetes Without the Chaos by Norhan. And she'll be presenting on March 24th afternoon. And it's basically building reproducible ML environments with Argo and Kubeflow. This is going to be a tutorial session, a hands-on tutorial session. So if you're there, you don't want to miss that one. So Michael, we prepared for our session?
Well, I think we're almost there. We just got a few more practice runs, and I think we're good to go. We show people the ins and outs of how working groups and SIGs and KEPs and all that works, and how to stay current with Kubernetes, which is actually something we're going to talk about today. So
yeah, that's great. Awesome. Really looking forward to that. Exciting times. All right, some of the recently launched courses. So we have the Google ADK course. We have the Core DNS Fundamentals course, the Crossplane Learn by Doing courses, Building AI Agents with Claude Agent SDK. So that's another one by Sai. And then we have Rancher Fundamentals by Raham. So if you go to KodeKloud.com/recent courses, you'll be able to Kubernetes. We have the AWS DevOps Professional Certification course that's by Michael. And then we have Data Structures and Algorithms is going to be going into the foundational track. All right, and the cohorts. So if you're part of the cohorts, as you probably know, we just started cohort 5 at the beginning of this quarter. And if you've joined the cohort in January, then you're probably doing either the CKA or the KCNA. So that's basically here. And if you go to cohorts.kodekloud.com, we should be able to see the progress. So if you haven't joined the cohorts yet, please check that out. share my tab here. So this is our cohorts tracking session. So we have 3 cohorts running: the AI Practitioner, which we spoke about a couple of weeks back, and then you have the Golden Kubestronaut and the Kubestronaut cohorts. Within Kubestronaut, we have the January cohort. So there's about 800 people who have joined this cohort in January. And if you look at it, you should be able to see where you are. So the leaderboard is based on your progress in the course. So how many hours of video have you completed? You can also add your certifications here. So there are a bunch of people who have already completed their certifications. About 139 have already been certified, and the remaining are in progress. So congrats to those who have gotten certified. For the others, join the cohort. The cohort application, new cohort starts next quarter. All right, and I think there's a special sale that's ongoing from the Linux Foundation, and we have a special coupon for you. So use this coupon codes to get a 50% off in your certification bundles. So if you plan to get certified from the Linux Foundation, we are a Linux Foundation partner, so you have some exclusive discounts that you can get. So keep a note of the bundles to get your certification vouchers. All right. So if you have any questions, feel free to share that in the comments, and we'll take a look at it. But right now we're going to switch gears, and we'll get into the Kubernetes 1.35 updates. All right, Michael, do you want to share that? And
yeah, let's do it. Okay. Assuming you can see my screen.
Not yet.
There we go.
Yep. All right.
All right. So we're going to talk about Kubernetes 1.35, which actually shipped in mid-December. So whether you're a beginner or advanced, we're just going to talk about the features that came out so that you can kind of understand, because this is probably one of the most significant releases, particularly for AI workloads. I would be completely remiss, by the way, if I didn't say, or at least share, that this is the picture that they put for what is affectionately known as Kubernetes, basically. And the theme is the World Tree release. They were basically basing this off of Norse mythology, like Yggdrasil, which is the tree of life. And so they were basing it off of this. And the idea was just like Kubernetes kind of far-reaching kind of touch points as kind of the core of all of the ecosystem for the CNCF for the most part. So we're going to walk through a bunch of these features and kind of see what makes sense, because I have to say, like, it's been significant. So, and I want to say we're going to focus on kind of what changes for us operationally also, because there's a few very significant things, including a release, by the way, that took 6 years to get from alpha basically all the way out to GA. So the release at a glance is that there were 60 enhancements in this version of Kubernetes, which was a lot, probably one of the heaviest ones. They usually, for the December release, it's built from September 15th pretty much on to December. And so there were a bunch of things they added about like scheduling, and a bunch of things they added about managing resources. There was a bunch of things about giving better control about container restarts. So we're going to just walk through the various pieces. And these are the kind of the ones that we think are the top. I would encourage you to both look at the additional resources, which we're going to provide a version of this deck to you so you can have it, but also the announcement covers this as well, right? So let's talk about the first feature that seems to be the most significant. First of all, let me just talk about the words at the top of the screen, gang scheduling. So that's actually a high performance computing term, which just says that if I need to schedule something, there's a whole group or gang of like resources that need to be allocated. So, if you're like starting up a single application, it's real easy. But if you're actually starting up an application that has 10 applications as part of it, because that's what high performance computing does, right? It distributes applications over a bunch of computers. That's a gang of applications. And so this is a term that comes probably from like the 90s, where people were taking a gang of applications and needing to schedule them. Here's the problem. With Kubernetes, if you're doing a distributed training job, which means you're taking a set of data and you're breaking it into, in this case, as you can see here, 8 discrete chunks. What happens is that right now in Kubernetes, if you're like, hey, I'm going to take 8 training jobs and I'm going to push them across my entire cluster, if your cluster doesn't have enough GPUs, what will happen is you'll see like 5 of the applications of those training chunks will actually get scheduled and the other 3 won't. And as you can see on the screen, what that does is actually that those 5 jobs are actually locking up cluster resources. They are actually taking resources. And the 3 that aren't scheduled, well, they're not scheduled at all. They're just in pending status. And here's the problem. Now what's happening is that you're actually burning CPU and GPU cycles on the 5 jobs, but they're not actually doing anything. They're just sitting there. They're just doing nothing. Why? Because all 8 had to be scheduled. And because all 8 had to be scheduled for the job to work and 3 of them are not scheduled, what ends up happening is that you've now basically got a lock, right? And the job's just not going to process anything. And so this is a scheduling deadlock, right? We've got 5 pods burning GPU hours, and we've got 3 pods that are not even scheduled that are blocking everything. And multiply this times multiple groups who are trying to schedule their machine learning and AI workloads, and you can see that the scale of the problem gets weird. And by the way, this doesn't matter what framework you're using, whether you're using PyTorch or DDP, it doesn't matter, right? The minute you've got a job that has 10 pieces or 5 pieces or 3 pieces, and one of those pieces cannot be scheduled, that's an issue. So what was Kubernetes? What did they do to fix that? Well, what ended up happening is they came out with a new workload API. Now, I know I just threw a bunch of YAML at you. But what this basically says is that we're going to create a policy that says when you schedule these pods, they all must be scheduled. And if one of them can't be scheduled, like if we go back to our previous set, if one of them can't be scheduled, then don't schedule any of them. And so what this allows us to do is it just allows the job to fail instead of actually falsely tying up resources. And so this kind of API, which has now been added, allows us to create pod references that refer to this new workload type. So then that way, when we schedule 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever pods, they either all get scheduled or none of them get scheduled. And that allows us to deal with the problem a lot differently, right? I will say that this doesn't replace traditional like GPU and queue management at scale. So you're still going to need queue and you're still going to need Volcano and your other CNCF projects that allow you to schedule with GPUs. But this does solve the problem of like, I started a job, it looks like it's running, it's actually not running, and I've now blocked everything because it's actually not doing anything. So this solves that particular problem.
And this is not just for the GPU workload, right? This is a generic API.
Exactly. And it can be linked or tied to GPU workloads, but you're right. It was to solve that problem, but it could actually be it could be storage, it could be any resource that could be blocking. So let's say you start 8 jobs and they need like a shared NFS server and 3 of them for whatever reason can't get it. You could also block it that way as well. Yeah. So, by the way, this is alpha. So it is disabled by default. So you've got to go into Kubernetes and explicitly enable it. Please, the recommendation is don't run this in production. Beta is targeted for April, but like until it's out, just know that you want to play with this. You don't want to put this in production.
Yeah. So the way it works is first we create pods or deployments the way that we normally would, and then we create a workload object that specifies the gang, the group or gang configuration, and then we link the pod to the workload API.
Exactly.
Reference. Okay.
Yeah, it actually creates a pod group reference inside the pod specification, so you can actually see it on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
That pod group of workers actually is what when you start the pods, you refer to that workload API. And so that way, any pod that has a reference back to that worker's pod group behaves with the specifications in that work group.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, notice, by the way, we're using PyTorch in our example. So
yeah.
Okay. So that's probably one of the biggest features. One of the more exciting ones, right? So this is general availability. So this is working today. So this is not alpha. This is not beta. This is available in 1.35 today. And actually, just to say this, it was beta in 1.33. So 2 versions ago, this was available. This was on by default. This is in place pod resize. I just want to say is I've been tracking this probably for like 5 years, but I found out later it's been around for 6, is that the ability to basically dynamically resize the pod without terminating the pod, without shutting it down. So before, if the pod was running at 0.5 meg, right, maybe bytes, right, whatever your definition is, and you needed to change it, right, what would happen is that you would detect memory pressure, it would detect there was a problem, and then it would delete the pod, update the spec, and then recreate the pod with no downtime. Now, I want to point out the slide does have an error because it should say in the green on the right-hand side, the pod's running, 1024 megabytes. So we'll fix that. But if now with CPU and memory specifically, and I just want to be clear, it's just CPU and memory. If you don't have enough resources allocated to your pod, instead of terminating it and redeploying it, you can now just dynamically resize both memory and CPU. So this is a big deal because now you can just patch the installation and it will give more resources to it, whereas before you had to terminate it and restart it. Now, you might say, well, Michael, that doesn't really matter because most of my workloads are stateless. That's probably true. But just know, like for stateful resources, like if you're running databases, this now becomes a game changer because restarting a database is not trivial, especially if it's a database of size. And so now what happens is that when you have a database workload and you're like, oh, we have to restart to get to a bigger size, because sometimes, especially transactional databases, it's hard to just keep adding replicas. You can't always do that. Now you don't have to worry about that. If your primary writer database now needs to be a bigger size, you can do it dynamically. And that's what this in-place pod resize does. It's a game changer in that respect.
So we always had kind of the horizontal, the horizontal scaling is we can understand, but we never had the vertical scaling of pods, right? And we have spoken about this, I think, multiple times, but it was in alpha, when it was in beta, and finally it's GA. And what this does is it helps us vertically scale pods.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now we got vertical scaling. This, by the way, is, if you want to see the command, it's a patch command, basically, right? And so in this particular case, it's the sub-resource resize kind of flag. And what it does is you're basically patching the specification to specify what the resource limits are. So in this case, the resource limit is 1 gig instead of the previous, which was 512 megawatts. I will say that this does require something I'm just going to mention briefly later. And for those of you who may be familiar with this, it does require cgroups version 2. So I just want to make sure that I'm very clear about that, is that this release is asking everyone to get off of cgroups version 1 and move on to cgroups version 2. If you're in a managed provider like AWS, GKE, AKS, you're probably fine. But just be aware that if you're running your own, you need to make sure that you're running cgroups version 2. If you don't know, there's lots of easy ways to find this out. But some of these features do require the latest version of cgroups in order to function. And cgroup is, by the way, just a prerequisite for when you set up a cluster. It basically takes the process and adds isolation and scoping and other sizing to it. And so that's what cgroups generally does. And so there's a version 1. Version 2 has been out for a while. And so this release of Kubernetes is probably going to be the last one that will support cgroups version 1. The next release is probably going to force everybody to upgrade. So I'm just saying that out loud.
Yeah. So can I ask if, so the reason we never really had the pod resizing in the first place for a long time, is that because of cgroup limitations? Is that because cgroup did not support it? And is cgroup v2 providing those the supporting features? Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The in a sense, and I think we refer to it as a jail or an isolation layer. The isolation layer that wrapped around like an application that was in a container, that was in a pod. The isolation layer was basically cgroups version 1. And then cgroups version 2, I want to say came out a couple years back, and that added the ability to dynamically rescale and resize the boundaries of performance. And I just want to be clear and restate this again. It's just CPU and memory. So if you are having problems with GPU or network or some variation thereof, and you've got some kind of scoping or limitation there, it won't attend to that. This current version only does CPU and memory, but it is because of cgroups. So version 2 enabled that.
Makes sense.
Yeah. It's also worth mentioning is that you can also decrease memory. So if you find that you oversized your system and you need to shrink it, you can also shrink it. By the way, that wasn't available in, I want to say in beta. I think they added that as part of stable. So you couldn't do that before. So now as part of the general availability, you can actually shrink your memory footprint as well. So yeah.
Cool.
So again, big deal for databases and other stateful workloads. Now you don't have to disrupt them. You can literally just resize them. Okay. This one's a little bit more subtle. So this is our third feature, right? This is the container restart rules. So you might say, does it really matter? So you may remember that a pod is the basic unit of deployment in Kubernetes. And inside a pod, you typically have one application container. You might also have sidecar containers and security containers and operational. You might have other containers, but typically it's one application container. That's the general best practice. So what's interesting about this is that container restart rules basically, like in this case, you have a pod with 3 containers. In this case, you have a GPU driver that's in a sidecar, like an NVIDIA driver. You've got a trainer application that is like holding like weights in memory, and then you've got like a logging sidecar. So let's say the GPU driver, not the logging one, not the application itself, but let's say the GPU driver goes red. So you can see it here, right? In the top box, the GPU driver just dies. And so it throws an exit code. Let's say it's 137, which is the out of memory thing. And so without restart rules, what will happen is when Kubernetes sees that fail, it's going to restart the entire pod. Like all 3 of these applications are going to restart. So here's the horrible part about that. If that training job has 40 gigabytes of state loaded, which is what you see in the box, and it restarts, all that data is lost. Now, there's ways around this. You can like checkpoint the training data. There's application level things that you can do, right? But this new feature allows Kubernetes to just restart the GPU container instead of all of the containers. This is all happening within a single pod, by the way. So this is a big deal. So what this means is that if the logging sidecar goes belly up and just terminates, and you're like, I don't want to restart the whole thing because I don't want to lose my training data. I want the job to keep running. And by the way, if this training job fails, what if it's part of a group of training jobs? And so if it restarts everybody. Now that's a thing in the past. You can actually tell Kubernetes, hey, if something fails here, just restart it. Don't restart the entire system. Don't do that, right? And so this changes how we design pods, right? It now means that like an exit code of 137, which is the out of memory exit code that you see, it doesn't mean now that we have to just completely start over. It now means that we can just granularly restart the things that matter and keep the things that are important to us. We can just keep them going. So I will say this though, is that Kubernetes still requires all pods to be good, right? So just know that the service will be marked not ready for a fraction of a second while it's actually restarting. And if it doesn't come back up, by the way, it will be marked as not ready. So this doesn't solve every problem, right? So just be aware. It does actually have to come back up. If it doesn't come back up, then Kubernetes is going to be like, oh, this thing is unhealthy. We're going to stop. So yeah, so that's the container restart rule.
Yeah.
So, again, just speeds recovery. That's its main thing. And by the way, it doesn't matter if it's, volumes, networking, it doesn't matter. It's really about the containers inside of the pod. That's what it's really about. Okay, so here's a big one. This one actually spawned a conversation with a maintainer the other day. So pod certificates. This one is huge. So the reason this is huge is that sometimes, by the way, when you're initializing a cluster and you don't have cert manager up yet, you need to initiate Cilium pods that require mutual TLS, but you don't have a certificate manager up because Cilium's not up. You following me? You can't get networking up because one of your core certificate services isn't up as well. Now, I would argue that you probably then want to externalize it, but whatever. Let's say that you have one cluster and you've got one place to do it, right? Pods can now request their own certificates for workload identity without having cert manager. Now, this doesn't replace cert manager. There's a lot of complex use cases that still require cert manager. But what this means is that before, we need to have secrets management and custom CRDs. We needed to have cert manager. We needed to have some service running that could feed out certificates for us, right? No more. With 1.35, when you start a pod, it can actually generate keys locally and then make basically a certificate request directly to the API server. And then what happens is that the certificate bundle, like the actual certificate itself, is written to the file system for the pod, and then the containers basically can use that as reference, right? And auto rotation is built in. So you basically get mutual TLS between pods. You don't need Spire or Cert Manager or custom certificates or secret. You don't need any of that. So this is huge because this solves this kind of interesting kind of chicken and egg problem of like, which one of these comes first? Because now, for example, you can start your networking pods with mutual TLS enabled, and a lot of your system pods with mutual TLS enabled. So you've actually got security between the networking connections, and you don't need Cert Manager to be up to do it. I want to restate what I said earlier. Cert Manager is still necessary for complex use cases, and Spire is also necessary for complex use cases. So it doesn't completely replace them. It does replace some of the basic functionality. So
how do we solve this before? Like what happened, as you said, if they didn't come up at the right time, the pods would just fail or just keep restarting until the cert manager comes up?
So I actually had a conversation with an engineer over at Zynga the other day, and he was like, we either needed to manually place the certificates in the pods in order to get Cilium to launch, or we had to external DNS Cert Manager out to another service on another cluster and then have it refer to that in order to even to be able to start up. The response I got from them in particular was it felt kind of janky, actually. It felt hacky that they had to do that, because they were like, we really just wanted it to all be inside that particular cluster, and now we're having to go off to an external shared services cluster, which itself now needs to allow another cluster to talk to it.
Yeah.
It felt complicated.
Yeah.
When I mentioned this to them, I was like, hey, did you know that 1.35 has like, you should have seen the joy on his face. He was like, what? Yeah. And then immediately was like, oh, wait, this means I don't have to do this manually. And so that's how they were solving, is they were either manually uploading certificates or they were externalizing as a shared service. Yeah. So that's also a big one. Mutual certificate, basically mutual TLS, mutual certificate sharing, basically encrypted traffic between pods is now something that pods can just request themselves. So let's see, there's a few others. There's mutable container resources, which basically allows you basically to suspend jobs and kind of, so here's a scenario. You submit a batch job, it runs for 6 hours. Then it comes out of memory because the data was larger than estimated. Like you've got more data than you thought, right? Your options before this particular feature was that you needed to delete the job, which means that you lost all the completion work, all the execution history and status. And then you had to recreate the batch job with more memory. Or you had to build a wrapper that captured the, all this stuff and then kind of wrote it out, right? So with this feature, though, the workflow changes. So let's say you run a job and after 6 hours, you're like, oh, it's taking way more resources than we thought. You can suspend the batch job, patch the job so that it has more memory on it, and then resume the job so that way it can finish what it's doing. So this matches somewhat with the kind of pod resizing piece, because I think one feature enabled the other feature, which now allows you to pause batch jobs, resize the job, and then have the job continue. So you don't have to stop the batch job anymore, right? So, because we should say this, is that when you suspended a job before, it basically terminated all active pods. So yeah, so not needed anymore. Everything's preserved with this. So, all right, one more thing, and then we'll open the floor for questions, unless you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to tell you that when I saw this, I actually got uncomfortable about all the clusters I have running, because I actually didn't know if I was running C Group version 1 or C Group version 2. So if this triggers a mild kind of auditing panic attack, I apologize. Hopefully it doesn't. So yeah. So just to say this is that there was one of the enhancements proposals, right? basically said, we need to move over to version 2 because we have all these features. It needs to happen. And you can see the command, by the way, the stat command that will let you look at the system file system, and it will tell you whether or not you have version 2 up and running, right? Just so we're clear, RHEL 8, Ubuntu 21.10, Debian 11, Amazon Linux 2023, they all default to cgroup version 2. So as long as you're not on a super, super old version, like RHEL 7, for example, right? Ubuntu 20, right? Debian 10. As long as you're not on a super old version, you're probably actually already on cgroup version 2 as the default, right? So just to be aware. We mentioned this earlier, but cgroups is what enables a process in containers and Kubernetes to kind of be isolated, to jailed is the old term that we used to use. So unless you're running a really old Linux distribution, by default, you're on version 2. But just know that you probably want to check and see if you match this, because it's not yet blocked in 1.35. But in 1.36, it will probably be blocked that you have to be on cgroups version 2. So they've been talking about this for a while, but they're giving you months and months to know that you probably need to make sure that you're on cgroup version 2, not cgroup version 1. So I will say this also is that AWS, if you're on the latest Linux version, same with Azure, same with Google, you're totally fine. I would check if you're using any of the serverless stuff. Like Fargate, for example, AWS Fargate still uses cgroup version 1 internally. So that means you can't do like in place resize. But like if you're using, for example, Fargate as a launch type with EKS, you probably want to check that because from what I know, they're still using version 1. They'll probably fix that by the time we finish this presentation, but just saying, right?
Yeah.
So it's also worth mentioning that not only did cgroup version 1 become a requirement in the next release, but if you're using containerd 1.x, containerd 2.x has been out for years. So you also want to make sure that you're updated there as well. So
yeah.
In our collateral, by the way, we have a bunch of things to kind of a checklist that you could use to kind of walk through your upgrade process to understand where you are with cgroups and the use of containerd and all that. And it is worth noting that there are a lot of notable features inside 1.35 that we just didn't talk about. So everything's from traffic distribution. Now you can add multiple authentication providers to your Kubernetes cluster, whereas before you only could do one. Now you can do multiples, which is awesome. Things like garbage collection, how to manage nodes that have multiple NUMA nodes on them. So I would highly recommend that you take a look at the patch notes for 1.35. There's also like the KubeRC, which, by the way, I did a video where I jokingly referred to it as the KuberC. I was waiting for someone to catch me, right? Nobody caught me. And then Camel, which is a more user-friendly YAML that Kubernetes is looking at to kind of make it a little bit more human-friendly. So yeah, there's a bunch of things.
Yeah, we spoke about some of these in some of the previous release videos. For example, we did speak about the preferred same zone in the 1.34, 1.33 release, I think. Yeah, some of these we've spoken about in the past.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely a lot more newer ones here.
Oh, and something that was really cool that I thought was cool is that you can now taint a node based on GPU or slices of a GPU. So like if you get a video card that's super hot and you need to prevent anything from scheduling against it, you can taint that GPU so that if a workload needs a GPU that's attached to that node, it will make it so it doesn't schedule against it. That's different because it doesn't block the entire node. It just blocks pods that actually need a GPU from getting on that node. That's a distinction that I thought was really cool actually in 1.35. Yeah. So you can now taint individual devices. And it doesn't matter if it's a GPU, an FPGA, it'll basically block it. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
A few other things. Oh, this is totally worth mentioning.
Yeah.
Does everyone realize that Nginx's ingress is going away? We've talked about this. Yeah. We've said it a lot. I'm just reminding everybody who can hear my voice is that I think it's March 16th. By the time that Mumshad and I are talking at KubeCon, in Europe on March 24th, it will have been over a week since Ingress basically completely retired for Nginx. So, there's tons of migration paths. We have videos on it. So just be aware that the Ingress for Nginx is going away. And it's estimated to be 30 to 40%, maybe more, of installations across the industry. So just let you all know again, right?
Yeah. And what's the general recommendation is to migrate to Gateway API, the CCP route?
Yeah, generally, or you can, Nginx has their own licensed version, or you can use, F5 has their own gateway fabric, or there's really a lot of really great options. But Gateway API, Mumshad, as you said, is that's the thing, right? Yeah. So anyway, in summary, there's a bunch of AI, ML, and DevOps stuff in 1.35. It's one of the biggest releases that we've seen. So a lot of detail here. We're gonna make sure we share this deck with you so you can get it. I think we're going to switch over to Q&A though after that little run through of all the key takeaways inside 1.35.
Yeah.
Good.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate the rundown. And also, there's a video on this already on our YouTube channel, so do check that out. I think it was released a couple of days back, where we explained this in more detail. But yeah, I think this is it's a little bit of a shorter session today. If you have any questions, feel free to drop those here.
Let's see. I saw one from Raja Gupta from LinkedIn. Oh, never mind. You were about to do Crossplane. I just want to mention he asked for a GPU course, and I just want to say, Raju, if you can add more specificity, like what kind of GPU course you want, would love to hear it, actually. And just know that on our homepage at the very bottom, there's a course feedback page, so feel free to leave feedback there. But if you want to type in additional detail, would love to hear what kind of GPU course you want, please.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, that was this one basically from Raj Gupta. Yeah, so if you go to request.kodekloud.com, and if you can share a little bit more about the specifics, please share. But in our foundational, in our fundamental course on computer science, I think there was there's a section on GPU in that for sure, the one by Alan. So definitely check that out. I think we go in a bit of a depth around GPUs on that. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, and Raju, if you hit me up on LinkedIn also, or Mumshad, just both if you want to. But if you hit me up on LinkedIn, I'll send you a link to the section in question.
Yeah. Okay. There's a message from Abdurrahman around thanking us for the work we do. So passed the CK exam 3 weeks ago. Yeah, congratulations to Abdurrahman, and appreciate the feedback. Thanks a lot for sharing that. We have Emmanuel, who's shared about the cross-plane course. So that's something that we have recently introduced. Video introduction to concepts that are made. So this was a learn by doing course, and I don't think we have it was just a hands-on course, not a video-based course. But understand the request. Some people like the video addition to the courses. So thanks for the feedback. There's a feedback on the Ansible certification course, which has fallen off the crack. So yes, the certification itself, the one that's I think that's a Red Hat certification. I think that was one of the courses we created a couple of years back. I am not sure. We're working on updating a bunch of courses right now. So we just finished updating all the Kubernetes courses, so all the 5 Kubernetes certifications, and we're in the process of updating the remainder of the courses. So the Ansible courses have already undergone one round of updates, I think a couple of years back, and now we're updating it again. So yes, this is in process. We're going to evaluate though the importance of the certification itself, because to be honest, I'm not really sure how popular this particular Red Hat certification is right now. But if you can tell us a little bit more about your learning track, we'd really appreciate. The same goes with the Docker course as well. We're actually undergoing an update right now. So the Docker course is going to be updated very soon.
Yeah, and I want to speak a little bit to Ansible is that we actually just went back and re-reviewed kind of what was the components inside of the Ansible certification. And Mumshad, you're absolutely right. Just to say this is that Red Hat is teaching things in the course that's attached to the certification that's actually not in the certification. As an example, containers. Containers used to be in the Ansible certification as part of a testable material, and they have it in the course, but it's actually not included in the certification. So we're having to do a little bit of evaluation about what do we need to do in the certification? Do we want to do the certification, or do we want to actually do the course content? And so just know that we're looking at it and actively, like it's been looked at even this week as far as like what we're going to do. But yeah, jury in a sense is still out. We haven't decided whether we're going to cover the exact content or just focus on the certification. So we're still figuring that out.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks a lot for the feedback. Thanks for noticing that and letting us know. But just want to assure everyone that we're actively working on updating those courses. If you look at the, so the next question is, okay, so I did make a comment on the VPA and the in-place pod resizing that Michael spoke about earlier. So I just want to highlight, so they're not the same, but there is a relation, right? So in-place pod resizing is basically how you resize something vertically. So there's a vertical and horizontal scaling. Vertical scaling is generally referred to, increasing the resources for a particular object, and in this case, it's a pod. But the VPA itself is the vertical pod autoscaler, and that's responsible for autoscaling a pod when it hits the particular limits. So there's a horizontal pod autoscaler that automatically spins up new pods when it hits the particular thresholds, and the vertical pod autoscaler is what assigns more resources to a pod when it hits a particular resource. So VPA itself is basically a controller in Kubernetes that's responsible for resizing the pod. But the in-place pod resize, the new feature that's released that allows resizing a pod without shutting it down, is now going to be used by VPA to automatically resize the pod. In the past, it used to be you had to like shut down the pod and add the new size and put it, bring it back up. But with the in-place pod resize feature, you no longer have to shut it down, right? So the VPA is going to use this feature to automatically add and remove, reduce resources on the pod. So they kind of relate.
I will say that as of 1.35. And by the way, Mumshad, everything you said is absolutely correct. It doesn't support in-place. VPA doesn't support using in-place resize on 1.35, but it 100% will on 1.36. So they've made very clear commitments to make sure that VPA works with the new system exactly as you said. I just want to make sure people know that as of 1.35, it doesn't. Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't. Okay. Yeah.
But 1.36, it will. So.
Yeah. Cool. Some questions around substitute for Nginx, as we spoke about. So there's the native feature, this is the gateway API. But like, what are probably some of the other alternatives that are recommended?
So the vast majority of Kubernetes installations are typically cloud run, just to say this, right? So if you're already integrating with your native cloud provider, like you're using load balancers on AWS, Azure, Google, GCP, you're fine, right? You're not using Nginx to begin with. If you want to look at other open source, there's things like Traffic, right? Nginx obviously is not going to support native integrations. F5 has a free tier. I probably would honestly go after Traffic because I love Traffic personally. Yeah. But if I'm on a cloud provider, I'm just going to use their native ones, right? I would say I'm hesitant to kind of recommend which open source one you should use if you're not running on a cloud provider, simply because it's really going to vary based on your use case. But in general, if you're already on a cloud provider, you're fine, right?
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, interesting one. Why did Nginx have to retire?
Okay, so I know the answer to this. Maybe you do too, Mumshad.
I don't know clearly. Yeah.
Okay. So I actually talked to the two guys who were maintaining the ingress. There were two people who were maintaining the ingress thing, and they were doing it by themselves for years, and no provocation or any criticism against any person, but they were kind of signaling for a while. They were like, we can't really keep doing this, especially since it was like 30 or 40% of installations. and then they weren't getting paid, which is not a problem, but they both had full-time jobs and lives and other things. So eventually, after signaling, hey, we kind of need some help, unfortunately they were just like, we just can't do it anymore. And no one picked it up because Gateway API came along and they were like, this is the future anyway. So it was a combination of like, hey, we've been doing this for a while and we really were glad to do it, but we kind of like want to be done. And they were like, oh, Gateway API is the future, so let's just go ahead and pivot over to something else. So it was a little bit of both. But when asked, it was like, well, the maintainers were like, yeah, man, this was a great run, but we're kind of wanting to be done. And they were like, and we got this brand new thing that we can do instead. So it was a combination of both wanting to get out of something, but also like, hey, this is where we're headed, so let's just do this, right? Yeah. So that's why Nginx open source had to retire.
Yeah. Interesting. So question, is LF planning to change the certification approach? If it gets CKS, the CK will be automatically extended or applied? Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think that's in the plans.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah. Do we have a plan for OpenShift course? So we do have an OpenShift course, but the hands-on approach requires having OpenShift in the lab, right?
Yeah.
With licenses and all of that, which I believe we've been looking into that for a bit. Yeah. But I don't think we have. I do have a course, but yeah, it's it's not a. The labs are going to be a bit challenging for that because of the licensing challenges with Red Hat, and I guess not being able to do that is going to be a challenge.
Well, and also just to say this, like OpenShift 4 is a beast. I mean, in terms of size and resource, and I know people are like, yeah, but we would absolutely love it. Just know that when it gets really big and wieldy and complicated, we've got to do a lot of figuring out how to make that optimized for students, especially since we want to make the labs available to you for hours, right? So just know that we haven't yet figured that out. And Mumshad's right, like the IBM licensing, we're just trying to figure out how to navigate that. So I don't know that I can give an answer either, Mumshad.
But basically, right? if you guys really want it, we're going to do it. So if you go to request.kodekloud.com and upload the request there should be a card there for OpenShift. And if you can all just go there and vote, and if we know that there's like enough demand for it, then we're absolutely happy to look into it. But as of now, I believe of all the new things that we're working on, it's probably not something that on priority right now. But yeah, would love to get your opinion on it. So do vote for it.
Yeah, it's probably worth like overstating that for half a second. Mumshad and I literally sit in calls where we're like, hey, what are we going to do? And it's like, if the feedback is high, that comes to the top of the priority list. So I just want to like say to you all exactly what Mumshad said, which is that your vote actually matters. So if you go to request.kodekloud.com and let us know in mass that you want something, it will probably happen, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. Emmanuel has a question. So we've been talking about the CNPE course. Has there been more progress on it? So it's being worked on, right? And do you know anything about it, Michael?
I do, actually. So just so you're aware, one of our internal golden Kubestronauts, Nuran, she's actually working on it. She's making huge progress on it. So, I mean, I can answer that question. Of course, absolutely there's been progress on it. You may have noticed that Nuran is actually going to KubeCon Amsterdam and she's presenting. So I don't know exactly. I think she's trying to get all the slides done before she leaves but I can't promise anything. It's probably going to be April before the CNPE comes out, but don't take that as a commitment. I actually haven't talked to her. I don't actually know, but it's probably going to be after KubeCon Europe.
Yep. All right. Currently preparing for, sorry, we have a few minutes left. So I'm just going to go through the questions real quick. Preparing for CKA, is it enough to refer to the course in the KodeKloud? So yeah, we've recently updated the course with the latest changes. So it's the most up-to-date version. we're always on top of it. I think there are some more updates that are coming up in the next version of the exam. So we're actually working on that as well. But whatever the version of the course is right now, yes, it's up to date. So that should be sufficient. There's also an ultimate mock exam series. So there's like 5 mock exams that you have access to. So those can help as well. Okay, yeah, I think others are general discussions, but that should be it. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much, Michael, for being here. And yeah, I'll see you all maybe in 2 weeks from now, hopefully, and probably at KubeCon Amsterdam if you're all going to be there. But yeah, once again, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.